Greetings all, Ferrari-Man 601 here. Those of you who are long-standing and stalwart fans of the channel may find this scene to be rather familiar. Welcome back to iRacing and welcome back to Pocono. Well, just as I had the opportunity to do in 2017, coming up rather soon, I am going to have the chance to drive a Formula 2000 car once again at Pocono. I've done this before, did this in 2017, did this with Bertil Roos Racing School out in Blakesley, Pennsylvania, very close to Pocono Raceway, and I'm doing the same here again. This time, though, we have a little bit of a different kettle of fish to play with. The last time I drove one of these cars, it was on the North Circuit here at Pocono, which is a fundamentally different type of course than the South Circuit. Yes, it's the same venue, but two very different configurations. Pocono Raceway, as it is a very unconventional sort of racetrack in that, yes, it's an oval, but it's actually a triangle, so much so that it's called the Tricky Triangle. 3 corners around this place, all of which are fundamentally different from each other, apart from the fact that they all turn left, at least in the IndyCar and NASCAR configuration. Here, Turn 1 of the oval track is going to be the final corner for us, and we're going to be taking it in the opposite direction, so we'll be turning right. This was the same that we did on the North Circuit in 2017. Turn 3 became Turn 1, and we turned right rather than turning left. But different kettle of fish, much higher banking here at Turn 1 versus Turn 3, and, well, it should be fun. Now, the reason for me trying to do something like this is because I did something very similar in 2017 before that first run in the Formula 2000 car. And I did it just to learn the circuit, to get a sense of what the car's going to be. The car that I'll be driving and the car that I have driven before is a bit different from the Skip Barber car available in iRacing. The Bertil Roos car is a Scandia F2000 powered by a Ford engine rather than the Skip Barber car powered by a Mazda engine. But it's the same idea. It's a 2000cc 4-cylinder. The Roos car is carbureted, not fuel injected, so a little bit of a different way that you have to use the engine, but for the most part it's a 1-to-1. The bigger difference, though, is the Barber car that we have here today has a 5-speed sequential gearbox. The Bertil Roos car has a 4-speed H-pattern straight-up manual. So a little bit different, but I drive an H-pattern manual on a daily basis, synchronized, of course, but synchro or unsynchro, it's not that much of a difference if you know what you're doing, so the gearbox not really a concern of mine. And of course we are doing the ultimate amount of cheating here because I will be shifting with paddles on the steering wheel because I can't be bothered to convert my TSPC over into the sequential mode. So I'll be cheating with paddles, but again, the gearbox not really a concern. I know what I'm dealing with there. What is of concern, though, is the South Circuit here at Pocono, and we have a little bit of a problem in iRacing. This version of Pocono that we have available that has the infield configurations dates back to 2011, and of course it's currently 2019, and there are some differences that have happened over the years in the infield configurations here. When I drove in 2017, yes, the configuration of the North Circuit was the same in terms of which way the corners went, how long they were, and where they were, that kind of thing, but the curbing had been changed a bit. It had been made a little bit wider, a little bit longer, a little bit more usable than it is here on iRacing. Those changes are a little bit more profound here on the South Circuit. Apart from not being able to go in the proper direction that I'll be doing in the real world in iRacing, we'll be driving backwards as far as iRacing is concerned. There have been some changes made to the middle part of this course, so we do not quite have a 1-to-1 correspondence. So there's going to be a little bit of guesswork versus now and on the day, but again, I think it should be sufficient for me to get my bearings and figure out exactly what I'm up against. What did happen in 2017, though, was I was expecting to learn the circuit, generally what things looked like and where corners were, but I wasn't expecting there to be all that much 1-to-1 correspondence with what happened in the sim versus what happened in the car. But I was very happily proven quite wrong with that. I knew everything that I needed to know. I knew where the bumps were. I knew generally where the curbing was going to be. I knew where the car was going to try to break free. I knew where I would have grip. Of course, the ultimate X factor in this is track conditions on the day, how much rubber is down, how much clag is down, Has it rained overnight? Is it raining during the session? These are things that we can't quite simulate in iRacing, but for the most part, we can get fairly close to what I experienced in the real world in 2017. Therefore, I think we could do the same here in 2019, albeit with a slightly different version of the circuit than what I'll be seeing in the real world. Without any further ado, though, let's just make sure we've got some gas in the car. We're going to pretty much fill the thing up to 5¼ gallons, and we'll jump into the cockpit. So here it is. We will not have any lap timing here because I'm going to be going in reverse according to what iRacing thinks is the configuration here. So that can be disregarded entirely. But the car is very similar. It weighs about the same as the Bertil Roos car. It's got the 5-speed sequential gearbox versus the 4-speed H pattern, but we can basically put those differences aside. Generally, just trying to get some bearings here and just trying to talk you through what I'm looking for and what I felt in the real world, and we'll see if those findings still hold true when I do this for real. Let's start it up. So, engine is fired up and happy. Oil pressure is good, right at about 50 psi. We'll turn hard left right out of the pits, and we'll just take a look at the circuit configuration. Very tight corner there, immediately out of pit lane. And then here, coming onto the banking, we have this tight right, and then this short shoot, I guess you can call it, onto the banking, which we can take flat once the tires are up to temperature. Of course, basically road tires on a car like this, so they have a very wide temperature envelope, but they do still benefit from a warm-up. Around turn 1 of the oval track now, this is our top speed. We'll hit about 110, 112 miles an hour or so before we come down into what is turn 1 or 2 for us. Very tricky corner, a long multi-apex right-hander which terminates there in that very tight right-hander, second gear of this car. Third gear, this is a little bit of a lift. Let the car jump out wide, and then we got to really jump on the binders for that tight left-hander again. Turning to the right, we'll pick up some curb there once we really get up to speed. Tires coming up to temperature still. And here we go, onto the banking. Bit of understeer, got to get out of the throttle there. We're still not fully warmed up. And back down around the banking again. You can see that it's a very short configuration. It's just over 1 mile long. But it's appropriate for a Formula 2000 car such as this. Something bigger than this, something with more power than this, definitely you wouldn't be able to get it going properly. It's at about this point, though, that the current configuration of this circuit deviates from what we have on iRacing. There's a little bit more of an infield section than what we have here. So again, some of that is guesswork. It uses slip roads that iRacing simply doesn't model, because they've most likely been built after 2011. But regardless, the entrance to the banking is the same, and then the exit off of the banking is going to be the same. Still, the X factor in this portion of the track, though, is going to be how do they punt us into turn 1 here? Because as you can see, coming off of the banking at 112 miles an hour, probably not something they want a crowd of relative novices doing, because you get some opposite lock going, and if you're already scared out of your minds being in one of these cars for your first time, or basically your first time, you don't want to be catching oversteer at triple-digit speeds. So there's probably going to be a chicane put in there, but I don't know exactly what that's going to look like or how they're going to do that. This should be flat out now, and it is. The gear changing in this car is just a lift on the upshift, and it's a blip on the downshift. No clutch required, provided you rev match correctly in the sequential gearbox. The real car, it's going to be clutch on the downshifts for me, probably double clutching on the downshifts for me, because I really don't want to break the car. That's what I did in 17, and it worked out pretty well. And that was very lurid, very sideways, but we got through it. There we can keep it in first gear. Tires are definitely happy now. Now coming up off of the banking, let's try and simulate a chicane being here. I would guess we'd start braking about here. They would square off the corner for us. There's probably a chicane that we've got to go around, something like that. And then we would get into the infield. So this corner becomes a lot slower and a lot easier. Here, because I don't need to use the clutch for most gear changes, I can left foot brake. Real car, it's going to be conventional right foot braking with heel toe on the throttle and brake as we're working the clutch on the downshifts. No problem. Do that every day on the road. Fine by me. Let's simulate that chicane. We'll brake in a straight line, go down into second gear, we'll turn in sharply, go around, and we'll come down into the infield again. Stay in second gear the whole time because of that speed reduction. Come down, clip the apex, come out. Pick up third gear. Just a bit of a lift is necessary. Pitch the nose in, let the back slide a little, downshift into first. Pick up the apex, curbing there. There's going to be exit curbing there. And there's going to be exit curbing there as well, where the left front wheel just went into the grass a little bit. The rest of this should be one-to-one. The other thing about not having the exact car that I'll be driving, even though this one is very similar, the view out the cockpit, of course, is different. I remember in 17, the view that I had was much, much lower than this. Say the bottom 60% of my field of view was all my own dashboard. You sit very low in these kinds of cars, so your eyes are constantly looking up. You can't see directly in front of you, which is not at all a surprise, but you really can't see much in front of you at all. You actually have an easier time trying to see your own pedals than you do seeing the nose of your car, so that's a little bit of getting used to. But quite honestly, what I found was, because you're wearing a helmet, because your peripheral vision is so restricted by the helmet anyway, it doesn't matter all that much. And your eyes, just because of, when you're doing speeds like these, I know 105, 110 miles an hour doesn't sound like all that much, but when your butt is a half an inch off the ground, it really does feel like a lot. So your eyes are so far forward, and you're thinking about where you want the car to end up long before it actually gets there. You're not looking directly in front of you anyway. For example, I'm already looking toward the apex of that third gear corner. Now I'm already looking for the entrance of this first gear corner. Now I'm looking at the other apex we've got to hit in the right-hander. Now I'm looking at the turn-in point to get onto the banking. Looking toward the apex. Looking for the wall. There's the wall. Looking down low on the banking. Looking for the curbing that comes in. There it is. Looking track out for the exit. Up near the wall. Near where the black is and the orange cone. There it is. Coming down, braking. I'd be looking for the apex point of the chicane that I'm just inventing. So you're not really looking at your own car. Of course, just as you do on the road, there is a degree of glancing around that you do. Checking your instruments, checking your mirrors, making sure your temperatures and pressures are happy. Other than that, though, it's eyes up the whole time. Now, of course, you may be wondering, how could I possibly have taken to this circuit so quickly? Well, I've driven this fairly extensively so far in iRacing. Initially, I intended to make a track learning video out of this, but I had some technical issues and I lost the audio. So, unfortunately, that didn't work. But we had some good learning that happened, and obviously now you're seeing the benefits thereof. Just inventing the chicane, as you can see. Little dab on the brakes, get the nose in, downshift, turn in, get the power on. Don't really have to worry about wheel spin too much in this car, unless you happen to get on the throttle when you're already well sideways. The differential will lock up pretty early, according to what I learned in 17 in the real car. And just coming up, looking for the landmarks. There's the cone. There it is. We'll just follow the road this time around. Downshift, a little bit on the brakes. And you can see just how much faster that corner becomes when you don't have to go through that imaginary chicane. Again, that should be there in reality. Simulate some proper gear changes that we'd be doing in the real world. So we'll be right foot braking with heel toe. Of course, doing this with paddles is a little bit different. Didn't really need third gear there. Basically practicing the motions. Now this is going to be fun, that corner right there coming onto the banking, because that should be flat in the real car. So we'll be picking up speed and we'll be doing some gear changes as we're turning onto the banking, so that'll be quite a bit of fun. Bit of a lift, pitch it in, get back on the throttle, down 2 gears. That's fun. And it was fun in the real world in 17, and I expect it to be fun again. Of course, as close as we can get here in sim racing to the visuals, which we already know are a little bit compromised, close as we can get to the sounds, which are, you know, fairly reasonable from what I remember. What did strike me about the sound in particular in the real world was how much you actually do hear your own engine. I was expecting it to be mostly wind, but no, you actually hear your engine, you hear the gearbox, you hear the tires chattering. It's pretty cool. And even though it's a 4-cylinder car with about 150 horsepower or so, it only weighs 1,100 pounds or so, so it's the power-to-weight ratio is pretty appreciable when you consider that. And even though you are only on road tires, which are designed to do 60,000, 70,000 miles without complaining too much, in all sorts of different weather conditions, you do still feel tire grip. Of course, you feel them when they overstep their limits of grip as well, which is also fun. Like this. Saved it. That's what I mean about wheel spin. If you get the back out and then you get on the throttle, you can get wheel spin. But again, for the most part, I think this is reasonable, and having done this once before, I've got a decent idea of what I could be expecting to see. We won't be seeing this on the day, I certainly hope. But even if we do, as you can see there, there's not a whole lot around this configuration for us to hit. So So all of that is quite welcome. And just very generally speaking, I'm expecting to have a great time. Honestly, when you do something like this, you get to drive a race car for real, as I'm now no longer thinking about what I'm doing. It's an experience that most people just don't get to have, and you know, when you're doing it in the moment, you understand that, and you realize, hey, I'd better pay attention, and I'd better soak up as much as I can, because it might never happen again. And that's honestly what I was thinking at the time. So it's very cool to be able to do this again, and who knows when the next time might come. It's a bit lurid. We have overheated the tires ever so slightly with all these slides and offs, but that's okay. But for the most part, I feel like that this is pretty reasonable. So there we are. I think, you know, it's not a one-to-one correspondence, but I think on the day it should serve sufficient just to be able to get my bearings, and it does help that I have driven the actual car once before, so I do have a little bit of knowledge in that. But the track's going to be a little bit different, and there's just going to be some learning. I know that I'm going to have a couple of cider laps in a road car before they put us into the race car, so that should be a big help. And of course, to learn the track conditions on the day, which is pretty much random at this point. Can't really predict it. So that should be fine, and that should take care of all the rest of the learning that I still have. But for the most part, I think we've gotten our bearings here, and just looking forward to be able to drive the real car. I do leave you with a look at a couple of off-board and on-board hot laps here. Nothing spectacular, just to give you a sense of what it looks like from the outside. But yeah, onward and upward, and let's hope that everything goes well and that we have a great time. Until next time, I do thank you all very much for watching. FerrariMan601 saying thanks, and of course, we will see you soon.